Hey everybody, Johnny from Worship Sound Guy here, and today you're about to learn the weirdest thing that I do on bass. Okay, so before we get into this, I've got to tell you a little story. So back in the day, your boy here used to go to some metal shows. It was super loud, there were mosh pits, it was the best. But what wasn't the best was the mix, at least most of the time. But one time, I heard the most amazing bass tone that I've ever heard. So I went up to the front of house engineer and said, hey man, your bass for your band sounded way better than the bass for all the other bands. You gotta tell me what you're doing on that mix. One sound guy to another, what is going on? And you know what he told me? No. So what did I do? I begged him until he finally broke down and told me what was going on. And the answer was not what I expected at all. But today I want to share it with you because it's totally changed the game on how I mix bass. Let's check it out. Okay, so really quickly before we get into this, I'm going to show you what my original bass tone sounded like. Here it is. Okay, so nothing to write home about. That was a Fender Jazz Bass through a SansAmp Direct Box, so just a really basic DI tone. So now let me show you what I learned. The trick to this bass tone is we're gonna process it in parallel. We're gonna treat the lows and the highs separately. So check this out. I split my bass into a bass sub and a bass high track. On any kind of board, you can just double patch your bass so you get two of the exact same tone. Next, we're actually gonna build our own sort of crossover for the bass. Let me show you how I'm doing that. So essentially what we want to achieve here as we process this bass is we want to separate the low frequencies and the high frequencies and treat them separately. Let's check that out. So I've set up two EQs, one on my bass sub track and one on my bass high track. Let's check them out. Literally all it is on the sub track is just simply a low pass or high cut filter that's filtering out everything below around 170 hertz. That's gonna let my sub frequencies pass through, but it's gonna cut out all the top end on this channel. Let's listen to it. So you can hear that's just what will be coming through your subwoofer. Next, I'm gonna do a high pass filter or low cut filter on my bass high channel. So that's gonna sound something like this. If you put these two tracks together, it sounds basically just like the original bass tone. You can see my low frequencies coming through on this EQ and the high frequencies coming in on this EQ. Okay, so now what are we trying to actually achieve with these two separate frequency bands on our bass? The main thing will be with the low end, where I want to lock in a rock solid sub-frequency that's not going to go anywhere. One of the things that's most annoying to me when I listen to a mix is when the low end isn't consistent. Some notes that the bass player plays are really loud in the sub, some are virtually imperceptible. So we want to fix that. Let's figure out how to do it. All it's going to take to get my low end locked in super solid is a limiter. Let's check this out. I'm using the Waves L1, kind of a classic limiter, but it's really not anything super special. Almost any limiter is going to do the exact same thing. So let's check it out. So all I'm doing on this limiter is pulling down my threshold until I'm getting about 6 dB of gain reduction. And then I'm just pulling down my output until it roughly matches where it was before I put the limiter on. Check out the level meter for just a second. Trust me, your subs are gonna thank you for that. Sending consistent low end is one of the most important things we can do to get our mix sounding really great. Now that we've got our low end locked in, let's talk about what to do with this high end. So this is where we get to be a little more creative and artistic with our tone. There are a few things we're gonna do that are gonna be really cool. It's gonna give us almost like a tone knob for our bass that we can control as we mix. Let's check it out. Okay, so over on my bass high channel, I'm doing just a couple of things. So remember, I've got this low cut EQ that's filtering out all the low end, and then the very first thing I'm gonna do is lay in with a little bit of compression. I'm gonna play a busier part of the bass where he's picking a lot more, and check out what it's gonna do. Okay, so that's catching all those little peaks of the pick attack. That's gonna really help even out the top end of our bass tone and make it much nicer to listen to. Let's listen to that with the subtrack. Let's compare that with the original. And now our new tone. So you can hear that compressor really bringing out the articulation and some of the mid-range grittiness. I absolutely love how that sounds. So check this out, this might be the coolest part. So as you're mixing, you might decide that you want your bass to sound a little bit different from song to song. Maybe it's a fast song that needs a little bit more of that top end, or maybe it's a slower song where you want to just be a nice round tone. So with this kind of mixing setup, you can do exactly that from the console without the bass player having to change anything. Let's check this out. I'm just gonna pull down the high end channel and listen to what happens. It's almost like you've got a built-in tone control for the bass that you can adjust just by using this fader. But what's awesome is you always have that rock solid low end coming from this channel. This makes it so easy to get a great consistent sound from song to song, but also to have a ton of flexibility about how your bass sounds. Okay, let's do one more thing on this high-end channel. I'm gonna do something a little bit crazy. I'm gonna use Wave's Guitar Stomp plugin to add a little bit of overdrive to it. Let's check out how this sounds. I'll have it bypassed at first and then engage it. So for some songs that might be a little bit much, but on something upbeat, that's gonna cut through and give you a huge present bass tone in your mix. Okay, next thing. I hear some of you going, but wait a minute, you're doing this on a computer using Waves plugins, I don't have those. That's fine. Let's do this on an X32 so I can show you that even the most basic console, it's super easy to get this exact same setup. Okay, so now I'm over here in my X32. Check this out. I've just made two channels, bass low and bass high, just like I had before. So that's just a low cut and a high cut filter on each track respectively. And I've set this around 344 for the high end, and then the cut on the low end track is gonna be at around 176, just like they were before. So now let's set up some effects to get the same results we were getting with our Waves plugins. First up, on the low end, I've got this precision limiter. So this is doing the exact same thing that the Waves L1 was doing. It's just locking down that bass tone, just keeping it rock solid on the low end. Then on the high end, I'm actually using the dual guitar amp effect to do basically exactly what the Waves Stomp plugin was doing in our other mix. Additionally, on the high end, I've got a very fast compressor engaged that's getting just a few dB of compression, just like that CLA 76 was doing over in the other mix. So now let's check out how it sounds. First, I'll play it with the guitar amp distortion off on the high end. So it's that same rock solid low end and very present and controlled high end. Let's turn our guitar amp on to get a little more action going on that high end. That sounds awesome. And as always, we can just back off on this high-end channel if we want to make a nicer, rounder sound to our bass for maybe a slower song. All right, so there's my super weird split bass setup. I hope that really works for you guys. Leave me a comment below if it does. Try it out in your own mix and see what you think. As always, you can hit that like and subscribe button right down there for more videos just like this. I'll see you next time.